You're listening to the Phillip Jordan Show, talking SEC football and beyond.
Good Monday morning, everybody, and welcome in to the Phillip Jordan Show. I am your host, Phillip Jordan from Last Word on College Football and 96.9 The Legend in Dothan, Alabama, where I'm the in-studio host and producer, Dothan Was Football. Hope everybody had a great weekend. Didn't do much, just hung out, watched some football, not just NFL preseason-related football, some other alternate league stuff I watched over the weekend, just kind of hung out. We are about to hit high school football season, so this week really kicks off the busy time of year for me. But anyways, guys, we're going to have a fun show today on Monday, and we are daily now. This podcast is daily, Monday through Friday, maybe an occasional Saturday morning podcast as well. That will be a regular thing, but maybe from time to time we might do some Saturday stuff as well. So get ready, Monday through Friday, 6 a.m.-ish. We will go live on YouTube at Phillip Jordan Sports YouTube channel, and then immediately the podcast will go up. And on today's show on Monday, we're kicking things off right. We're going to be previewing the Arkansas Razorbacks with new colleague at Last Word on College Football, Wes Pruett. You can also check him out over at 4-Star Sports Media, where he's got stuff going on there. They got stuff going on all the time over there, so you can go check out his stuff there. So we're going to get into it. We'll pre-recorded this on Saturday. Me and Wes did. We talked about Arkansas, obviously, Sam Pittman. He talks about the Sam Pittman effect a lot, and that's a very interesting term. He's really the first one I've heard you use that for the Boss Hog over there in Fayetteville. We do talk about KJ Jefferson, who replaces Treylon Burks. We will jump into the offensive line, Barry Odom's defense, why on paper they do not have a lot of starters returning. They have a lot of starting experience on this defense despite that. Bumper Pool, their leading tackler last year, started one game. That's it. He was coming off the bench. So we will discuss that. And I will say this, Wes has a very interesting prediction about Alabama, Arkansas, and Ole Miss. I think you're going to enjoy this conversation between me and Wes. Then we get done with that. I am going to come on the other side of that conversation and just give y'all an update on the drama going on in Kentucky between Mark Stoops and John Calipari. Before I jump into my conversation with Wes, I want to let you guys know where you can find me in the podcast. You can find me on social media at PJordanSCC. The podcast is available on all your favorite podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Check us out. Go to Apple Podcasts. Please follow, rate, and review. If you leave a review, I will read it on a future edition of the show. You can check me out over on YouTube, which is where we're at right now. We're live on YouTube every morning at 6 o'clock. Anyways, you can check that out, the Phillip Jordan Sports YouTube channel. Please hit subscribe, hit the bell for all the notifications. And if you leave a comment on the video, I'll also read that on a future edition as well. Of course, you can always email me at sports.phillipjordan@gmail.com. Now, let's jump into my conversation with Wes Pruett, previewing the Arkansas Razorbacks. Everybody joining me today on the show is Wes Pruett, Last Word on College Football. He covers the Arkansas Razorbacks, also owner of 4-Star Sports Media. You can check them out over there. Great podcast they have with 4-Star Sports Media. And Wes, I appreciate you coming on the show today.
Man, Phillip, thank you very much for having me, man. You've got a great show right here that you do weekly. I've been tuning in here recently, and I appreciate the kind words on 4-Star Sports Media. We've been hard at it for about 2-3 years now. Been a company for almost a year now. But we have a good time. We have a media, I call it a network of shows. We've got shows that cover Memphis. We've got shows that cover Arkansas. We've got shows that cover college football as a whole every week on a national level. And we're also steadily trying to grow. We're trying to grow and find other guys that have other shows that they may want to bring on the network, or guys that, may want to host their own show. I would like to branch out and have shows that cover the NBA, the NFL, the WNBA, things like that year round. that way you're constantly producing more content. But yeah, man, it's a lot of fun. We are credentialed with the University of Memphis. We're credentialed with the Memphis Redbirds. We're credentialed with Arkansas State and some others. So it's a lot of fun. We have a lot of fun putting articles out. We have a website, 4star.live. If anybody wants to go there, you can listen to all of our shows, read all of our articles. All the information is there at 4star.live. But yeah, man, I'm really excited to be on today talking with you about Arkansas football. I think when you look at Arkansas coming off a 2021 season, which was extremely successful, 9 wins, finished 9-4 on the season. And I mean, if you're Sam Pittman, this is your 3rd season now. I mean, Phillip, when you look at the SEC, was there a more impressive team last year than Arkansas?
There's a lot of good things about Arkansas, and one I think is huge. I don't think a lot of people talk about this. When I was doing my research, they bring coordinators. They are one of 8 teams to have all 3 coordinators: offense, defense, and special team. Particularly Kendall Briles and Barry Odom. That's huge for Sam Pittman, having that consistency with your coaching staff. I think that's a huge thing for them going in. And you're right, they were a team that did not back down. I mean, they were like a few teams were last year. I mean, Alabama wasn't the dominant Alabama last year, but they were a few plays away from knocking off Alabama last year. So I mean, they were a really impressive team. They lost 1 point to Ole Miss. I mean, their record could have even been better last year.
Yeah, I mean, when you go back and look at their season last year, you got the 1 point loss in an absolute dogfight with Ole Miss down in Oxford. And then you're right. You've got an Alabama game that I think was one of the greatest play calls I've seen in a long time, and that was that fake field goal by Arkansas. But, I mean, a play here, a play there, and that game could easily be turned around. And we're sitting here talking about Arkansas coming off an 11-win season possibly versus the 9. But, I mean, when you look at it, I mean, Arkansas ended up going to the Outback Bowl, winning the Outback Bowl. That was their first Big Ten win in school history over with a win over Penn State. But, I mean, it all – let's be honest, man, it all starts and stops with KJ Jefferson at quarterback. Just last season, Phillip, 67% passing, 2,676 yards, 21 touchdowns, only 4 interceptions. But then he turned around and did it on the ground as well. Over 600 yards and 6 touchdowns on the ground in 146 attempts. So, and he was also the number 4 scorer on the team. So when you look at Arkansas last year, yes, they lose Treylon Burks to the NFL, which I think is a massive hole. Sam Pittman talked about it at the SEC Media Days in Atlanta recently. You're not going to be able to replace him with one person. That's impossible. So you have to do it with multiple people. And we'll get to it here in a minute, but I think that Arkansas did an incredible job on the recruiting trail. I call it the Pittman effect. You can go back to Last Word on Sports and look at the article called The Pittman Effect, and I think it's tagged in pretty much all of the articles that I write. But the Pittman effect is true. It's a fact, and it's definitely happening on the hill up here in Fayetteville, Arkansas.
Yeah, and you talk about Sam Pittman. It's just the energy he brings, and it still wows me what he did that first year, the 2020 year, the COVID year. They go 3-7. Now, some people say, "Oh, that was not a great record," but they hadn't won an SEC game in almost 2 years. And going 3-7 that first, and I remember that first week they played Georgia, and they gave Georgia everything they wanted that first game. Georgia pulled away late, and you could already see the energy. Felipe Franks, he was in at quarterback. They went 3-7. Mm-hmm. KJ Jefferson had that one game, I think it was against Missouri, where he really he lit it up and he showed what he could do. But just the energy, and I was reading one of your past articles, actually one of your recent ones about Arkansas, and what stuck out to me, and one of the things is that he said you're not playing for the university, you're playing for the state of Arkansas, and that's huge. And you get players to buy into that. You're not just playing for a school, you're playing for a state. Just the whole impact he's had, not just on the program, but the state's incredible.
Oh man, it's. I mean, being up here in Fayetteville now and just talking to some different Arkansas fans around town. Sam Pittman, dude. If they don't put a statue of that man outside the stadium within the next 3 to 5 years, I'll be shocked. Maybe 3 to 5 years is a stretch, but he definitely, I think, deserves that honor. I mean, you go 9-4 last year, and then you turn around and you bring in guys like Hazelwood from Oklahoma in the transfer portal, Drew Sanders from Alabama in the transfer portal. You lose 2 guys to LSU, but you bring 2 guys in, Landon Jackson and Dominique McLaughlin. Then you bring in Jordan Dominic and Latavius Brini out of the state of Georgia. One's from Georgia Tech. Brini is from Georgia. Dominic's from Georgia Tech. Listen to those schools, Phillip. Mm-hmm. Alabama, LSU, Georgia Tech, Georgia. When's the last time somebody has wanted to leave one of those schools and come to Fayetteville, Arkansas, and play for Arkansas? It's been a long time. And then Arkansas's preseason ranked this is the 24th time in school history that the University of Arkansas has been ranked in preseason. Out of those 24 times, only 14 have they finished ranked. It will be very interesting to see if Arkansas has a little bit more expectation on them this year. The bar has been raised. I'm very interested to see how they do in a season where they start the season ranked. Where do they finish? I think they could finish fairly well.
Yeah, and you brought up Treylon Burks, replacing him, and that is a big. I mean, what he did for them last year was incredible because he's a big enough receiver where he's not going to get out physical by any defensive back. He's going to be the physical person there, but he's also super fast. So he brings both those elements together, and replacing what he is down the field. I think that's big for Arkansas's offense. Now, you talked about they bring in the transfer Jaden Hazelwood from Oklahoma. Who do you, if it's not him, who do you see of these receivers that could maybe fill that role as the deep threat to kind of open up things offensively with the run game and the middle passing game and, just drop the safeties back?
Man, I think it's going to be a combination, honestly. I think you may see guys like incoming freshman Isaiah Centegna from right there at Fayetteville High School. I don't know if you're familiar with the city of Fayetteville, but the University of Arkansas literally backs up to Fayetteville High School. Literally, campuses butt up against each other. He's going to be a stud. There's numerous guys. Hazelwood's going to be your deep threat guy. I'm assuming Bryce Sanders, Stevens is going to be another one. They do bring in a guy named Matt Landers out of Toledo. Young man can really, really play. He's got speed. He is fast. You talk about somebody who can take the top off of defense. He is a young man to look out for this season for Arkansas. But let's not forget, you still got Trey Knox right there at tight end. Trey Knox, a former wide receiver, moved into tight end, and I think he's more efficient there. And I think he's more comfortable there. Trey Knox may be a guy that may slowly turn into one of KJ's favorite targets in 2022.
And obviously, when you have a former offensive line coach as your head coach, it all starts up front. And what stuck out to me last year with them, particularly against Texas and Texas A&M, physicality. I'm obsessed with quarterbacks. I think I told you this when I reached out to you to have this conversation. But it doesn't matter who your skill position players are. If you can't block and you're not getting pressure on the quarterback, you're not being physical on the line of scrimmage, you don't have a shot at football. But these guys, they have 4 or 5 guys returning. And that is always so big to me when I look at offensive lines, good offensive lines. Now, if you have a bad offensive line and all of them come back, I'm like, okay, that's nice. They're experienced, but they weren't good when I saw them play. But this is a good offensive line, and having that experience for those 5 guys coming back, this was a great rushing team last year, led the SEC in rushing. I know they lose some at running back with Treylon Smith, but still KJ Jefferson and the rest of the running backs. That's where it all starts, and it's where that physicality. So what is your thoughts on this group of the offensive line and how they do open up that running game for Arkansas?
Well, when you go back and look at Arkansas's rushing attack last year, like you just said, they led the SEC. I also believe they may have even led the nation in rushing efficiency for the season. It all starts and stops with the big boy at center, and that's Ricky Stromberg Jr. Young man is a beast, man, an absolute beast. Brady Latham, sophomore left guard, is a really good player. Played well last year. You've got Dalton Wagner. He's a senior over at right tackle. Another guy that's really, really got the line anchored down. I mean, that offensive line, you're right. You're exactly right. It's just physical. And multiple head coaches have now talked about Sam Pittman, the Pittman effect. I keep going back to it, the Pittman effect. Sam Pittman came in, and the first thing he did was he affected the physicality of this team through his quiet confidence. That's what I love so much about Sam Pittman. He doesn't seem like, at least to me anyway, he doesn't come across as a guy that's just going to berate you. It's more of a, hey, I'm going to get on your butt, but I'm going to turn around and love you like you're my son, too. And if you watched, and I'm sure you did, if you paid attention to SEC Media Day, and I talked about it in that article that you were referring to, he has a confidence about himself that is definitely impacting and brushing off on this team. Not only the team, the program, the state, the fan base. It's a confidence. There's Arkansas fans that are what I think unrealistically talking about 11 wins, 12 wins. If we can beat Bama, possibly undefeated. I mean, you just came off 3 wins 2 years ago. But that's the kind of confidence that Pittman is building in Arkansas.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I see it with the people that follow and cover Arkansas. When you see online, there's a confidence, there's a lot of excitement. And I remember there was a time where Arkansas fans weren't excited about the football team. It was like, okay, let's get through it. I mean, the Chad Morris years, the end of Brett Bielema.
God, yes.
It was not as positive. I mean, it was nowhere near positive with Chad Morris. There was some with Bielema, but it tailed off, and it's kind of been a rejuvenation of Arkansas. And Arkansas is one of the better, I think, environments too when they play at home too as well in the SEC. I don't think it gets talked about a lot. Some teams get mentioned more at the top of that list. Defensively with Arkansas, and I was looking when you first glance at Arkansas, who's coming back from last year. So, whoa, there's 3 regular starters. Lindy Sports in their magazine had an interesting stat. I wanted to read it off to you and get your thoughts. It said, yes, they have 3 regular returning starters back, but defense has 14 players with 114 combined starts. So if you just glance at this defense, they are experienced. And your leading tackler, Bumper Pool, had 1 start last year. When you look at this defense, what are your thoughts? I mean, last year they were 6th, 7th in the SEC scoring in total defense. But since Barry Odom's been there, they have been phenomenal at turning over other teams, getting the ball back for the offense. But when you look at the defense, just what sticks out to you?
I mean, obviously Jalen Catalon in the back. Who I think, this is my opinion, this is an unbiased opinion, I think he's the best safety in the country. I think when you look at his size, his speed, he was a little dinged up by injuries last year, but he's come back this year healthy. He's going to be really good. Then they bring in Latavius Brini out of Georgia, another safety that's really talented. And you talked about Bumper Pool. He wasn't even a quote-unquote starter last year. Bumper is he's 63, I believe, tackles away from the all-time record at Arkansas. He wasn't even a starter last year. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's the Bumper Pool is incredible. That linebacker crew with Hayden Henry and others, those guys are going to be really, really good. Matter of fact, I was watching an interview with the linebackers coach, Coach Shearer, recently talking about Bumper Pool, and he said, he said last year, he said Bumper wouldn't, he didn't start, he didn't play, until he was needed. He said, and I watched him, it affect him, but he said it made him a better football player because he understood that every moment counted, that every chance you get, you got to make the best of it. On the defensive line, you lose Big John Ridgeway to the NFL. He's going to be hard to replace. Guys like Eric Gregory are going to have to step up, and others. I think their physicality up front, Arkansas has got to do a better job of getting to the quarterback. Barry Odom understands that. Barry Odom knows that Barry Odom is one of the best defensive coordinators in the country. No question about it. The best acquisition Arkansas made in the offseason, you alluded to it earlier in this interview, man. They brought back their coordinators. That was the biggest acquisition Sam Pittman can made. It keeps the continuity going. It keeps the same familiarity with the coaching staff, with the players. This defense is going to be really, really, really good this year. When I say really good, I think they could be one of the top in the SEC. They finished sixth in scoring. I think that can change. I think Barry Odom is going to come with a little more aggression, which is what Barry's really a little bit more known for when you really go back and look at him. Last year he had to drop a lot of guys back in coverage. A lot of that has to do with the offenses that they're facing. But, of course, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, they're going to chunk the ball around the field. We already know that. But, yeah, this defense, man, Phillip, this defense is good. They're nasty. They're talented at all three levels. And the thing is, with this defense, each level that you go up or back, however you want to look at it, the defensive line is good. The linebackers are really good. The defensive secondary is incredible. I mean, so you know what I'm saying when I say that. Like, the more you go back, the better they get. I mean, it's going to be very hard, I think, for a team like Mississippi State and others to just sit back and pick this team apart. I don't think that you're going to be able to do that.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think Missouri made a mistake when they let go of Barry Odom. I felt that. I mean, he was hamstrung with some things at Missouri. I don't know. That's a whole other podcast. With Missouri and Barry Odom,
you could have a whole show on Barry Odom and Kendall Browse individually by themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's look at the schedule. Now, they open up with Cincinnati, which that's not – look, no, if anybody out there listens to me that like Cincinnati Bearcats, I'm sorry, but that's not a daunting game in my opinion. I think they'll be a fine team in the AAC, but they lost a lot of guys, a lot of NFL talent. If I'm an Arkansas fan, I'm not too worried about Cincinnati opening up season. I don't know how you feel about that, but I'm kind of in the way. You know what's interesting to me? And that South Carolina game, second game, because Shane Beamer's got some good stuff going at South Carolina. And look – and with Spencer Rattler, look, now sometimes I think he's in his head and he can be rattled. He has shown that, no pun intended because of his last name. Oh, but he's a super talented quarterback. That's an interesting game, week 2. I don't know how you feel about those first two, but I'm actually looking forward more to Arkansas, South Carolina than I am Arkansas, Cincinnati. But those first 2 weeks, what kind of comes to your mind?
Well, I mean, when you look at this Arkansas schedule, once again, it's a daunting schedule. It is every season. I mean, you know, I don't want to say I feel bad for them, but I do in a sense. I mean, this is the first time. So Arkansas plays Cincinnati week 1, first ever meeting between those two schools. There's a lot of Arkansas fans that I think are looking past this game to South Carolina. And I don't think you can do that if you're Arkansas, but I think that at the end of the day, when the final buzzer goes off, I think Arkansas wins. I think it's a little closer than some people may necessarily want it to be. I think Cincinnati's still a very talented football team. Of course, they lose Desmond Ridder, Jerome Ford, and others. They lose a lot of their defensive back side of the ball. But you're right, that South Carolina game, Arkansas has not played very well against South Carolina. Last few times they played. The last meeting in 2017, which was in Columbia, was an absolute drumming by South Carolina. They won 48-22. If you're Arkansas, that South Carolina game, I think, is going to be key for this season. Get an early season conference win sandwiched in between 2 non-conference games. I think that's big for Arkansas, especially going into Missouri State week 3. You got Bobby Petrino coming back to Fayetteville. Very interested to see if there'll be neck braces and blonde wigs all over the campus. I can assure you there probably will be. But also, man, I mean, it's funny. So when I drive to work every day, I actually drive down the road that he had his wreck on. And I get it, man. Like, no matter if there's a blonde on the back of a motorcycle or not, that road, you can easily have a wreck on that road. It's very, very curvy. And the curves kind of slip up on you, I guess you would say. That's in game week 3. Then you go back down to A&M. The burning question in my mind is, can Arkansas do it 2 years in a row? Can you knock off Jimbo Fisher 2 years in a row? Especially considering everything that's transpired at Texas A&M. Oh, in the off season, nobody. I mean, is anybody thinking about Arkansas? Is it all A&M, Alabama? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that A&M game, and then right after that, you've got Alabama. I mean, after Missouri State, Phillip, it gets tough, man. And then you don't have a bye until after week 7 when you travel to BYU for another team, first time ever. So Arkansas plays Cincinnati, BYU, and Liberty for the first time in school history this year.
Yeah, I was looking at the schedule. Once you get past A&M and then Alabama, you're on the road 3 straight games. At Mississippi State, at BYU.
Yeah.
You get that off week, then you go to Auburn, but who knows what Auburn's going to be doing. Then, like you said, you got Liberty, LSU, Ole Miss, and then you close out at Missouri. Okay, we've gone over. I told you 20 minutes. I'm just going to get something off my chest real quick because I do this every time. Man. Every time I have someone that covers Arkansas on any podcast I've ever done, I have to get this off my chest when we talk about the schedule. It is, I cannot stand that they put Arkansas and Missouri on that Friday after Thanksgiving. That is supposed to be the battle of the Golden Boot. That's what I was raised on Fridays. The day after Thanksgiving, we got Arkansas and LSU. I wish the SEC would somebody. I know they want A&M and LSU that last week, but there's something about that tradition that I remember. I grew up on. You know, everything's better when we were kids, anyways. LSU and Arkansas should play each other the day after Thanksgiving. But that's the end of my rant on that.
Here's my take on, and I'm very, very similar to you on that. I don't, and I don't want this to get me in trouble. I don't understand the battle line rivalry, which is what they call Arkansas and Missouri. I don't understand it. When you look at the history and the absolute classic games that Arkansas and LSU have had, go back to War Memorial. Go to YouTube and type in Arkansas LSU 2005. I mean, that game was an absolute hell of a football game from Little Rock. That game was in War Memorial Stadium in Little Rock. So, I mean, you know, go back to playing LSU in Little Rock once every 2 years, once every 3 years, whatever it may be, once every 4 years. But put that game back where it's supposed to be on the schedule. Put it on either Thanksgiving night or the day after Thanksgiving, preferably the day after Thanksgiving. That way I can be awake and watch it and I don't get full and go to sleep. But, I mean, why is that game not there? That is when that game's meant to be. That's the way it's been the whole time. Let's just flip those two. Because guess what? Arkansas LSU means a lot more to the SEC than Arkansas or than A&M LSU does. And you can save that quote, that little audio clip and post it wherever you want to, but it means more. The SEC, it just means more, right? Isn't that the SEC's moniker? Well, if it just means more, then you need to start putting games that mean more in the right slots on the freaking schedule. And LSU, Arkansas needs to be November 25th every year. No questions asked.
Yeah, I just feel like the SEC tried to force a rivalry.
They do. They do, and it makes no. And then here's the thing: now that Oklahoma and Texas are going to come into the SEC, you're going to see even more of this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's that's just a tangent. I always go on it, especially when I do a preview for Arkansas when I have somebody on that covers the team. But we talk about the schedule and we just kind of ran it down. So, and I always ask this in season previews for you, and this is kind of, you talking also to the Arkansas fan base that may be listening. What are reasonable expectations for the 2022 Arkansas Razorbacks?
Oh man, I'll give you ceilings. Because I feel like that's the safest way. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
So let's go ceiling. So let's go high ceiling first. I think high ceiling for this Arkansas team, 10 wins. And I can tell you those wins. So Cincinnati, South Carolina, Missouri State. I think they lose to A&M. I think they beat Alabama, and that's my hot take of the season. I think they beat Alabama. I think they beat – so I think they lose to A&M, and I think they're going to lose to Ole Miss. I think they win 10 games.
Okay.
That's that's.
And if you're at 10 wins, you're in a conversation with the SEC West. I mean, especially
You are.
You beat Alabama, and then so if your next loss,
I think they finished second behind Ole Miss in the SEC West. Just to give my full prediction, I think Alabama loses 3 games this year. I know that has nothing to do with Arkansas football, but I do. I think Alabama loses 3 games. I think Ole Miss wins the West, and I also think Ole Miss wins the SEC.
Well, that would be an interesting take. And look, I'm a big fan of Lane Kiffin, so even though I'm the Auburn writer,
the first time in school history that they ever did it.
Yeah, ever got there. I mean, they've never been, which they can thank Arkansas for that because had the backwards pass not happened. Well, the Chad Kelly year there at Ole Miss under Hugh Freeze, they would have went to Atlanta. So that's how close they were on that one. But it's going to be interesting. And Wes, this has been a fun conversation talking to you about the Arkansas Razorbacks. Looking forward to the season. We're just a few weeks away. But if the listeners and viewers wanted to follow you online, where can they find you and all the work you're doing?
Man, so you can find me personally. I am on Twitter. It's at the 4 and then Star Sports West. It's all one word, obviously. You can find 4 Star Sports Media. We're on Twitter at the number 4 Star Sports M, and then we're on Facebook, 4 Star Sports Media. You can find us on Apple Podcasts. Man, anywhere that you need to find a podcast, iHeartRadio, whatever. It's 4 Star Sports Media Network. We appreciate anyone who wants to listen, chime in, comment, go listen to our old stuff, watch our old videos, comment on them, whatever you guys want to do. We really appreciate it. We run Tuesday night. There's a show on there covering Memphis sports. Wednesday night, there's a show on there covering the Arkansas Razorbacks. Razorback Zach and Marcus Carlson run that show, do a great job. Thursday night, we do a college pick'em show, which is essentially just a round table of college, whatever the college sport going on right then. So right now would be college football. This week, we're going to break down the Pac-12 and the Big Ten. Last week, we talked ACC and Big 12. But if you guys want to give us a follow, share, like, all that, man, really appreciate it. But Phillip, it's been a great time talking Arkansas football with you, man. I'd love to come back on anytime you want me.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate the time, and I do look forward to talking again sometime down the road.
Appreciate it, Phillip.
All right, and once again, thanks to Wes for coming on today's edition of the show. I really appreciate him coming on the podcast and talking all things Arkansas. Like I said, interesting predictions down there at the end of that conversation. Anyways, before we get out of here, kind of an update on what's going on in Kentucky. Of course, last Friday I talked about the comments made by John Calipari about Kentucky World Football School, basketball school. Football podcast. Football's always going to come out my mouth first. We were a basketball school, and then Mark Stoops tweeted about it. Well, Mark Stoops talked about it in a press conference over the last few days. When Mark Stoops had this to say, when you start talking about my program and others that we can compete against, me, I don't do that. I stay in my lane. So that's in defense of my players, in defense of the work that we've done. And believe me, we want to continue to push, but don't demean or distract from the hard work and dedication and commitment that the people have done to get to this point. I don't need to apologize for that, and I won't. We understand history, he said. That's great. I embrace it, and I love it. The history of our basketball. I'm proud of it. I love it. I didn't have that history. We're creating it. John Calipari came back and tweeted, I was told about the comments Mark Stoops made in his press conference. I reached out to Mark Thursday and we'll try again. Comparing our athletic department to others was my bad. I have supported Mark and the football team through good and bad. I will continue to support them and cheer them on. And really, yes, Calipari shouldn't have mentioned the football program or any other programs, really. I mean, obviously, like I said Friday, this all ties back into him wanting a new basketball facility. But you can't do that by throwing the football program under the bus. The football program is doing really well. 10-win season last year, second 10-win season in the last 4 years under Mark Stoops. And what this does, because you saw it on social media when these comments were made last week, you saw some programs in the SEC sharing photos of their coaches being all kumbaya. They had Auburn with Brian Harsin and Bruce Pearl. Had Arkansas with all their coaches. And that's not a good look. And what this can do, Mark Stoops is going to do some additional work on recruiting trail now, because teams are going to use that against Kentucky now. And that's not good. And while Mark Stoops is capable and he'll work around it and everything else, but Calipari just he hurt Kentucky football recruiting with those comments. That's a really big thing, because now other coaches are going to say, "Well, you want to go to the basketball school or football school?" That's going to be something that's going to be said. And I believe it was Matt Hayes over at Saturday Down South had an article out talking about who would be harder to replace. If both left, let's just say if both left Kentucky, Calipari is easier to replace because of Kentucky's football history. I mean, basketball history. I keep saying football. I keep saying football. I mean basketball. You would get a good name. You would have somebody you would want to put the football side. It would be hard because you have to replace what Mark Stoops has done. And prior to Mark Stoops, Kentucky football, they were happy with 6 or 7 wins going to a bowl game. Kentucky football has expectations now. They expect to be good. And replacing him whenever that time comes is going to be difficult for Kentucky, whether he leaves for another job or down the road he just retires from football. So it's going to be an interesting situation. And on Wednesday, be joined by Aaron Gershon from 24/7 that covers Kentucky over there. He will be joining the podcast Wednesday. We'll be talking with him. Tuesday will be a solo pod, and then Friday will be solo again. Now, I will let y'all guys know something here. Fridays will be NFL. Every Friday, Thursdays will be NFL heavy here on the show. But that's just kind of what to expect. So it's going to be an interesting week, and we'll see how it goes. And I apologize if I have misspoke a couple of times saying stuff. I'm new to this, getting up bright and early like this to record a show. But anyways, I'm going to get out of here. We're getting close to 40 minutes. If I'm doing this every day, we do not want to keep this podcast going too long every day. Just remember, you can follow me on social media at PJordanSEC. The podcast is available on all your favorite podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Check the show out. You can also find the show on YouTube, on the Phillip Jordan Sports YouTube channel. Just subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and I'll leave a comment there, and I will read it. And you can always email me at sportstalkphillipjordan@gmail.com. Anyways, guys, I hope you have a good Monday. I'll be back in the morning to talk more goodness that is college football. Until next time. Bye-bye.